A $200 million deal. A private room in London's most exclusive restaurant. A billionaire sheikh, Khalid Al-Jamil, is holding a pen, ready to sign a contract that will reclaim his family's lost legacy. His team of experts, his lawyers, and a respected historian have all given their approval. The wire transfer is cued, but as the pen lowers, the only person in the room who knows the truth isn't an expert. It's the waitress Anna Thompson, an invisible girl pouring their coffee. And she's about to break every rule, risk her life, and expose a catastrophic lie with 5 simple words in a language no one thought she knew. The rain in Mayfair didn't so much fall as it asserted itself. It was a cold, driving Tuesday in October, and the gray light of London turned the polished brass of the Elysian restaurant into a dull, watery gold. Inside, it was another world, a hushed cathedral of old money and new power, where the carpets were so thick they seemed to drink the sound of your footsteps. And into this world every day walked Anna Thompson, feeling like a ghost. At 27, Anna was a masterpiece of studied invisibility. Her uniform, a stark black dress with a crisp white apron, was immaculate. Her light brown hair was pulled back into a bun, so severe it tugged at her temples, a constant, dull headache that was just one of many she endured. She was pale, with eyes that were a nondescript hazel, and she had perfected the art of sliding into a room, refilling a water glass, and disappearing without ever making eye contact. She was, by all accounts, the perfect waitress for a place like the Elysian. But Anna Thompson wasn't just a waitress, she was a scholar. She was the daughter of the late Dr. Alia al-Shami, a name that, in the hallowed halls of academia, was spoken with the same reverence as those of ancient scribes. Alia al-Shami, the world's foremost expert on 9th century Kufic script, a paleographer who could date a manuscript by the very pressure of the calligrapher's hand. Anna had grown up not with nursery rhymes, but with the cadence of pre-Islamic poetry. Her mother's lullabies were tales of the Mu'allaqat, the hanging odes of Mecca. Anna's father, a British diplomat named David Thompson, had met her mother in Damascus. Theirs was a love story of shared intellect and clashing cultures, a quiet life of books and academic debates. Then the war, then the flight, then London, then her mother's illness, and now this. Anna, who held a double first from Oxford in Semitic languages and catechology, was $80,000 in debt from her mother's private medical care. The academic world, with its poorly paid fellowships and nepotistic circles, had no place for a quiet, grieving woman with no stomach for self-promotion. So she hid. She hid at the Elysian, a place so expensive and exclusive that she never had to worry about running into anyone from her old life. Her manager, Mr. Davies, was a man who lived by the clock in the reservation book. "Thompson," he'd hissed at her during the morning brief, his voice a dry rustle. "The penthouse suite, at 7. You are on primary service. These are not normal guests. You will not speak. You will not be seen. You will anticipate. Understood?" "Yes, Mr. Davies," Anna murmured, her gaze fixed on his left earlobe. "This is not a dinner party, Thompson. It is a signing. The guests are Sheikh Khalid Al-Jamil and his party, and a consulting group. They have booked the entire suite. No one else on the floor. Security has already swept the room. You will be wanded before you go up." Anna just nodded. Sheikh Khalid Al-Jamil. Even she had heard the name. Not a flashy playboy prince, but a genuine heavyweight, a recluse, a kingmaker from the UAE, with a personal fortune that beggared belief. He ran one of the world's largest sovereign wealth funds, but his true passion was history, specifically his own family's. He was said to be obsessed with reclaiming artifacts and documents scattered during the fall of the Ottoman Empire. At 6:45 p.m., Anna stood outside the service entrance of the penthouse. A stern-looking man in a sharp suit, clearly ex-special forces, held up a security wand. He was British, but his earpiece crackled with Arabic. Anna instinctively understood the man on the other end. "Floor's sterile. Package is 5 minutes out." The security man, whose name tag read Frank, nodded at her. "Right. You've been briefed. Eyes down. Only speak if you are spoken to, and you won't be." He opened the door. The suite was breathtaking. Not a restaurant, but a vast private apartment with 20-foot ceilings, a roaring fireplace, and a private terrace overlooking the dark, rain-slicked expanse of Hyde Park. In the center of the room, a massive mahogany table was set for five. At 7:03 p.m., the guests arrived. Sheikh Khalid al-Jamil was slighter than Anna expected, in his late 50s, with a neatly trimmed gray beard and eyes that seemed to absorb all the light in the room. He wore a simple, impeccably tailored dark gray suit, not traditional robes. With him was an older advisor, Dr. Barakat, and his British lawyer, a man named James. 5 minutes later, the consulting group arrived. This was a different energy entirely. The man who entered first was Richard Sterling. He was the human equivalent of a champagne flute, tall, thin, elegant, and dangerously sharp. His Savile Row suit probably cost more than Anna's entire university education. His smile was dazzling and predatory. "Your Excellency," he purred, bowing slightly. "A pleasure, a true pleasure." Behind him was the expert, Dr. Evelyn Reed. She was in her 60s with a severe gray bob and tweed jacket. She looked every bit the part of the distinguished Oxford historian. She was carrying a heavy, climate-controlled silver pelican case, which she placed on the table with exaggerated care. Anna moved like smoke. She poured chilled water, still not sparkling, the Sheikh's preference. She'd read the writer. She served the amuse-bouche, a delicate construction of caviar and gold leaf, her hands perfectly steady. "Shall we then?" Sterling said, his hands clasped, unable to hide his excitement. Dr. Reed placed the pelican case on the table. She unclasped the four heavy-duty latches. The sound echoed in the quiet room. She opened the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of black velvet, was not a jewel or a gold idol. It was a document, a single sheet of aged, cream-colored vellum covered in dense, beautiful Arabic script. It was bound by a faded green ribbon, held in place by a large, intricate wax seal. "Your Excellency," Dr. Reed said, her voice resonant with academic authority. "The Al-Jamil Charter, dated, as we discussed, to 988 AD. The original grant of lands to your ancestor, Al-Jamil the Great, by the Caliph himself. Lost for 1,000 years, until now." The Sheikh leaned forward, his eyes riveted. His advisor, Dr. Barakat, a historian in his own right, put on a pair of white gloves and a magnifying loupe. He studied the document, his breathing shallow. Anna, standing by the service trolley preparing the mint tea, stole a glance. The calligraphy. It was stunning. A powerful, early Kufic script. It was a style she knew intimately. It was the style her mother had taught her to write before she could even write in English. And as she looked at it, a tiny, cold splinter of doubt entered her mind. Something was wrong. She quickly looked away, pouring the hot water, the scent of fresh mint filling the air. It was nothing. It was just her nerves. She was just a waitress. She was just a ghost. "As you can see," Dr. Evelyn Reed began, "the provenance is impeccable." She used a small silver laser pointer, its red dot dancing over the ancient vellum. Anna stood motionlessly by the wall, next to the heavy drapes. She was trapped. She couldn't leave the room until the service was formally paused, and they had moved from presentation to dining, so she was forced to stand and listen to a lecture she felt she had been born to hear. "We first acquired this from a private collector in Istanbul," Sterling interjected smoothly, "a man whose family had, shall we say, custody of several items from the old imperial archives. It was in a deplorable state. Dr. Reed has spent the last 18 months on restoration and authentication." Dr. Reed nodded curtly, taking back the floor. "The vellum, as you requested, has been carbon dated by the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich. The results are conclusive. The goat vellum dates from 950 AD, plus or minus 30 years. A perfect match for the 988 AD date stated in the text." The Sheikh's lawyer, James, scribbled a note. "The dating is confirmed, Your Excellency." "The ink," Dr. Reed continued, "is a classic iron gall compound, consistent with the period. We ran a spectroscopic analysis. The chemical signature is pure. No modern contaminants, no titanium dioxide, nothing to suggest a 20th century forgery." Dr. Barakat, the Sheikh's own expert, was still hunched over the document. He murmured in Arabic, "The seal, it's incredible. It is the Lion of Jamil. I have only seen sketches of it from secondary sources. It is perfect." "Indeed, Dr. Barakat," Reed said, a thin smile on her face. "The seal was the final piece of the puzzle. It verifies the document, and the document verifies the seal. It's a perfect hermeneutic circle. Anna felt that cold splinter again, a perfect circle. Her mother's voice, sharp and clear in her memory, as they sat in their dusty study in Damascus. Anna Habibti, do not trust perfection. Perfection is the mark of the forger. The true master is human. He makes mistakes. He gets tired. He smudges. The lie is always perfect because the liar is afraid of being caught. The truth is messy. Anna pushed the thought down. She was a waitress. This was not her world. Sterling gestured to the lawyers. And of course, the document itself, a reclamation of the lands known as the White Desert, a territory whose ownership has been contested for a century. This document, he tapped the table, ends that contest. It grants your lineage, your excellency, undeniable sovereign claim. The $200 million is not a price. It is frankly a pittance, a filing fee for a kingdom. The room was thick with the smell of old paper and new money. Dr. Reed, the sheikh finally spoke. His voice was quiet, but it commanded the room. The text, the calligraphy, you are certain of the style? This was it. The question Anna herself was screaming internally. Absolutely, Dr. Reed said, without a fraction of a second's hesitation. The script is a textbook example of Eastern Kufic from the late 10th century. Note the strong verticality, the pronounced angularity of the kaf and the aleph. It is the formal, royal script of the era. You can see comparative examples in the great mosque of Isfahan. Dr. Barakat nodded. She is correct, my sheikh. It is flawless. I would have staked my reputation on it. It is the most beautiful example I have ever seen. Flawless. Beautiful. Perfect. The words echoed in Anna's head. She was refilling Dr. Barakat's water glass, her movements slow and silent. This brought her closer to the table. Close enough to see. Her eyes scanned the text. She wasn't reading it, not at first. She was feeling it. The rhythm, the spacing, the flow. And that's when she saw it. It wasn't one thing. It was a dozen tiny things. The diacritics, the vowel markings, the dots and dashes that gave Arabic its sound. Dr. Reed called it 10th century Kufic, but the vowel markings were in the Naskh style. Naskh was a cursive script, developed later, standardized in the 11th century to be more legible. To find Naskh diacritics on a 10th century Kufic document was odd. A regional variation, perhaps? Possible, but unlikely for a document of this formality. Then she saw the kaf, a single letter. It was angular, as Reed had said, but the final flourish. It had a slight, almost imperceptible curve that was not characteristic of the 10th century. It was a flourish from the 13th century Thuluth script, a calligrapher's personal touch, or a forger's mistake. Her eyes darted across the page. Her mind, a finely tuned instrument trained by the best in the world, was now awake. It was scanning the text, not for style, but for content. She was a ghost, standing right behind Richard Sterling, who was laughing at some small joke the lawyer made. She read a line, then another, and then she saw the word. It was a simple word, nestled in a long sentence about territorial boundaries and water rights. The word was kahwa. Anna's blood turned to ice. She almost dropped the heavy glass water jug. Her hand, the one holding the jug, began to tremble. Kahwa. Coffee. The text was a 10th century charter. 988 AD. Coffee, as a drink, as a concept, was not introduced to the Arabian Peninsula from the highlands of Ethiopia until the late 15th century. The first coffee houses in Mecca and Cairo were founded 500 years after this document was supposedly written. The word kahwa simply did not exist in this context. It was an anachronism, a 500-year-old blunder. It was impossible. How could Dr. Barakat miss it? How could Evelyn Reed, with her 18 months of research, miss it? Anna looked at them. Barakat was blinded by the seal, by the idea of the discovery. Reed wasn't a historian. She was a liar. She was a very, very good liar. She had built a perfect cage of carbon dating and spectroscopic analysis, but she had forgotten to check the most basic thing of all, the words. Richard Sterling was sliding the final contract papers across the table. If you'll sign here, Your Excellency, The wire transfer instructions are in this folder. We can conclude this historic evening. The Sheikh picked up the heavy gold Mont Blanc pen. He uncapped it. The click was the loudest sound Anna had ever heard. He was going to sign. He was going to transfer $200 million for a fake. Anna's heart was a drum against her ribs. Mr. Davies' voice, "You will not speak. You will not be seen." Her debt, her visa, which was tied to this job, her new, fragile, anonymous life. She could lose it all. She could be fired, deported. These people were not just rich. They were powerful. They could crush her. The Sheikh's pen hovered over the signature line. She thought of her mother's fierce, uncompromising love for the truth. "To allow a lie to live, Anna," her mother had said, "is to become a liar yourself." The pen tip touched the paper. "No," Anna said. It was a whisper. No one heard. Richard Sterling smiled, his teeth white. "A new era for your family, Sheikh." Anna's terror was suddenly, shockingly, replaced by a cold, sharp rage. A rage at the arrogance, at the laziness of the lie, the disrespect. She put the water jug down on the service trolley. The clink of glass on silver cut through the room. Everyone looked up. The ghost was suddenly visible. The silence that fell was not empty. It was heavy, weighted, and absolute. 5 pairs of powerful eyes were suddenly fixed on the waitress, a girl who had no business existing in their universe. Anna's face was pale, but her eyes, for the first time, were alive with a fire that startled them. Richard Sterling was the first to break. His smile was gone, replaced by a mask of cold fury. "What is the meaning of this? Get out! You are interrupting!" Mr. Davies, who had been waiting in the hall, must have heard the change in tone. He scurried in, his face ashen. "Miss Thompson, what are you doing?" "Apologies, Mr. Sterling, Your Excellency. 1,000 apologies. She is new. She will be removed." "Anna." The Sheikh's voice cut through Davies's panicked apologies. He hadn't moved. The pen was still in his hand, poised over the paper. He was looking at her, not at her, into her. "You said no." It hadn't been a whisper. He had heard. Anna's entire life spooled out in front of her. The quiet apartment, the bills on the table, the long bus ride home. It was all about to vanish. She took one step forward, away from the wall, into the light of the chandelier. Her hands were clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. "Do not," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "Sign that paper." Sterling shot to his feet. "This is an outrage. Davies, call security. I want this lunatic arrested." Frank, the Sheikh's head of security, was already moving, his hand on his earpiece. He was at Anna's side in 2 strides. "Miss, you need to come with me, now." "Wait." The Sheikh held up his left hand, a simple, regal gesture. Frank stopped. Mr. Davies stopped. Sterling, mid-outrage, stopped. The Sheikh slowly, deliberately, put the cap back on the pen and placed it on the table. He leaned back in his chair, folding his hands. The $200 million deal was on hold, because a waitress had spoken. "Miss Thompson, is it?" the Sheikh asked. His English was perfect, with a faint British edge. "Yes, sir." "You have," he glanced at his lawyer, "approximately 10 seconds to explain why I should not have you removed from my presence and from this establishment permanently. Why should I not sign?" The room held its breath. Dr. Reed was watching Anna with a look of pure, venomous curiosity. Sterling looked like he was about to have an aneurysm. Anna looked past Sterling, past the lawyers, and directly at the Sheikh. She had to make a choice. The English, the language of her job, the language of her hiding, was not enough. She needed the language of her mother, the language of the truth. She took a deep breath, and then she spoke. Her entire demeanor shifted. The subservient, invisible waitress was gone. Her back straightened, her chin came up, and the voice that came out was not the timid murmur of Miss Thompson. It was the clear, crisp, educated Arabic of Damascus, a dialect synonymous with ancient scholarship. "Sir, do not sign." The effect was electric. The Sheikh's eyes widened. Dr. Barakat, his advisor, literally dropped his magnifying loupe, which hit the carpet with a soft thud. James, the lawyer, looked bewildered, understanding nothing but the sudden, tectonic shift in the room's power dynamic. Sterling and Reed, who clearly did not speak the language, looked confused. What? What did she say? Sterling demanded. The sheikh ignored him. He replied to Anna in the same formal Arabic. You speak Arabic? Yes, sir, Anna replied. Fluently, I was born to it. Then speak, the sheikh commanded. What is wrong? Anna looked at the document on the table, the object of so much reverence, and then in that same, flawless, academic Arabic, she delivered the killing blow. This is a fake. Pandemonium. Even before the sheikh could react, Richard Sterling heard the one word he did understand. Fake. A fake! He roared, his face turning a mottled crimson. A fake! How dare you? How dare this servant? Your Excellency, this is an orchestrated insult. I am the director of Sterling Historical Acquisitions. That, he pointed a trembling finger at Dr. Reed, is Dr. Evelyn Reed of the Ashmolean. We have provided carbon dating, spectroscopic analysis, full provenance. Dr. Reed, recovering her composure, stood up. She's insane, she said, her voice clipped. A troubled employee. Perhaps she's trying to extort you, Sheikh. I insist you call the police. This is a $200 million transaction, Sterling was shouting now, losing his polished veneer. I will not have it derailed by a girl in an apron. Frank, get her out of here. Davies, she is fired. Do you hear me? Fired. I am not fired, Anna said, her voice quiet, but it cut through Sterling's tirade. She turned back to the sheikh, who had remained preternaturally calm, watching her, analyzing her. Sir, please, she said in Arabic, ask your expert. Ask Dr. Barakat. Ask him to read the 7th line from the bottom of the first paragraph, the line concerning the rights to the oasis. The sheikh looked at his advisor. Dr. Barakat was pale, his hands shaking as he fumbled to put his loop back on. He was humiliated. A waitress, was presuming to correct him in his own field, in his own language. Dr. Barakat, the sheikh prompted, his voice gentle, but with an underlying edge of steel. Embarrassed and angry, Dr. Barakat bent over the document. He found the line. He read it. His lips moved silently. He read it again. And then all the color drained from his face. He looked up, not at the sheikh, but at Anna. His expression was one of pure, unadulterated shock. What is it, man? The sheikh snapped. Dr. Barakat looked at his employer. He swallowed. My God, he whispered in Arabic. The word here, kawa. It refers to the coffee rights of the oasis. The sheikh stared at him. And? Your Excellency, Dr. Barakat stammered. Coffee was not known in the 10th century. This word, it's an anachronism. By 500 years. The room went absolutely deathly silent. The only sound was the rain lashing against the penthouse windows. Richard Sterling and Evelyn Reed, not understanding the Arabic exchange, were momentarily confused by the silence. Well? Sterling demanded. What's the problem? The sheikh turned his head very slowly to look at Sterling. His eyes were no longer calm. They were chips of obsidian. Mr. Sterling, the sheikh said, his voice lethally soft, you have a great deal to explain. The shift was instantaneous. The hunters became the hunted. I don't understand, Sterling stammered, his bravado evaporating. What word? What's he talking about? Dr. Evelyn Reed, however, knew. She didn't speak Arabic, but she knew exactly what anachronism meant. Her face, which had been a mask of indignant fury, was now a carefully blank canvas. She was calculating. It seems, the sheikh said, his voice dangerously polite, that my waitress has a better command of 10th century history than your paid 18-month research team. He gestured to Anna. Miss Thompson, please, approach the table. Anna stepped forward. Frank, the security guard, moved with her, not to restrain her, but to protect her. Sterling looked wild. This is preposterous. Dr. Reed suddenly found her voice. A single word? It's a scribal error, a later annotation. It doesn't invalidate the vellum. It doesn't invalidate the seal. The carbon dating is conclusive. Is it? Anna said, her voice no longer shaking. The fear was gone. This was her world. This was her mother's world. She was standing on solid ground. Dr. Reed, Anna said, her English as crisp as her Arabic, your carbon dating dates the vellum. It dates the 10th century goat hide, but it doesn't date the ink. I beg your pardon? Reed said, offended. We ran a spectroscopic analysis. I told you, it's a pure iron gall compound. It is, Anna agreed. An excellent iron gall compound. One you can make in any modern university lab. But you made a mistake. You said it had no modern contaminants, no titanium dioxide. That is correct. Which is true, Anna said, but all 10th century iron gall inks have contaminants. They have trace elements from the water source, from the oak galls, from the pot they were boiled in. A pure iron gall ink is itself an anachronism. It's too clean, but that's not your biggest mistake. She looked at the sheikh. May I? She asked, gesturing to the white gloves Dr. Barakat had discarded. The sheikh nodded. Please? Anna slid her hands into the gloves. They were too large. She carefully, reverently, turned the vellum sheet slightly, catching the light from the chandelier. Your second mistake, Dr. Reed, was the script. You called it textbook Eastern Kufic. You're not wrong. It is textbook. It's too textbook. It looks exactly like the examples in Dr. Al-Shami's 2005 monograph, The Kufic Hand, Form, and Function. It's a perfect copy, but a real 10th century scribe writing a royal charter wouldn't be so rigid. There would be human variation. There would be a flow. This, she pointed, was written slowly, painstakingly, by someone copying a style, not inhabiting it. Dr. Reed was chalk white. Anna had just named her own mother's book. But your third mistake, Anna continued, her voice gaining strength, was the kaf. You see it, Dr. Barakat? The flourishes on the terminal letters? They are Thuluth flourishes, a 13th century style. They're beautiful, but they are wrong. They're 300 years too late. Dr. Barakat just stared, his face a mask of awe and shame. Yes, I see it now. How did I? You were looking for the seal, Anna said, not unkindly. You saw what you wanted to see. And your fourth mistake, Dr. Reed, Anna said, her voice dropping, was the kawa, the coffee, the 500-year blunder, a word that explodes your entire narrative. You and Mr. Sterling bought a 10th century piece of vellum. They're not hard to find. You can buy blank folios from looted manuscripts in any black market. And you hired a very, very good calligrapher. But you didn't hire a historian or a linguist. She turned from the document and looked directly at Evelyn Reed. You're not Dr. Evelyn Reed of the Ashmolean, are you? This is slander, Reed hissed. No, said James, the sheikh's lawyer, who was suddenly, furiously typing on his phone. He looked up, his face grim. She's not. I've just checked. The Ashmolean has no Dr. Evelyn Reed on staff. There was an Evelyn Reed. She was a research assistant. She was dismissed in 2010 for authenticating a forged set of Roman coins. She was disgraced. The room exploded. Richard Sterling didn't wait. He grabbed the Pelican case, slammed the charter inside, and lunged for the door. This is not over. You don't know who you're dealing with. He never made it. Frank, the head of security, was not a man to be taken by surprise. He moved with a brutal, balletic grace. Sterling hit the door, not with his hand, but with his face, propelled by Frank's armbar tackle. He went down in a heap of expensive tailoring. A second security man, who had been standing guard in the hall, was in the room instantly, cuffing Sterling's hands behind his back. Dr. Reed didn't run. She just sank into her chair, her face a crumpled, papery mask. She was defeated. Get him up, the sheikh commanded. Frank hauled Sterling to his feet. His nose was bleeding, a grotesque splash of red on his white silk shirt. You can't do this, Sterling spat. This is a civil matter. You can't detain me. I am not detaining you, Mr. Sterling, the sheikh said, standing up. I am a guest in your country. I am merely having my security prevent you from leaving until the Metropolitan Police arrive. James, please make the call. Fraud. Attempted fraud to the value of 200 million pounds sterling. I am sure they will be interested. Sterling's eyes went wide with genuine terror. Mr. Davies, the manager, who had been hiding by the service trolley, looked like he was going to faint. He was witnessing a geopolitical incident in his dining room. The sheikh walked over to the table. He looked at Anna, who was still standing there, her hands in the oversized white gloves, her heart hammering with the adrenaline of the confrontation. He looked at her, then at the forged document, then back at her. "Miss Thompson," he said, his voice soft again, "who in God's name are you?" The room, now cleared of the shouting and the immediate threat, felt vast and silent. Richard Sterling and a catatonic Dr. Reed were being held in the adjoining study by the Sheikh's security, awaiting the arrival of the authorities. Mr. Davies had been dispatched with a stiff whiskey and a sterner warning to ensure the hotel's discretion. It was just Anna, the Sheikh, his lawyer James, and a deeply humbled Dr. Barakat. The adrenaline was fading, leaving Anna trembling. She was still wearing the apron. She was still, technically, the waitress. She began to instinctively clear the table, her hands moving to the water glasses. "Miss Thompson," the Sheikh said gently, "please, stop." Anna froze. "Sit down," he said, gesturing to the chair Richard Sterling had just occupied. "Sir, I can't. I'm staff." "You are no longer staff," the Sheikh said, not as a threat, but as a statement of fact. "You are my guest. Please, sit." Anna slowly, awkwardly, slid into the plush, high-backed chair. It felt like sinking into a throne. She still had the white gloves on. The Sheikh sat opposite her. He poured 2 glasses of water himself, the ice tinkling, and pushed one towards her. "Drink." Anna drank. The cold water was a shock. "Now," the Sheikh said, leaning forward, his eyes intense. "Once more. Who are you?" Anna looked at the table, at the ruined $200 million deal. She looked at Dr. Barakat, who was watching her with a mixture of shame and professional awe. She took a deep breath. The time for hiding was over. "My name is Anna Thompson. My father was David Thompson, a British diplomat. My mother," her voice cracked just once. "My mother was Dr. Alia Al-Shami," Dr. Barakat gasped. Alia Al-Shami? The calligrapher? The author of The Kufic Hand? That Alia Al-Shami?" "Yes," Anna whispered. "She was my mother. But she passed away," Barakat said, his voice full of reverence. "2 years ago. A great loss. A light went out." "Yes," Anna said, blinking back a sudden, sharp tear. "It was a long illness. After we left Damascus." The Sheikh's expression softened. "You are Alia Al-Shami's daughter." It was not a question. It explained everything. The flawless Arabic, the encyclopedic knowledge, the eye that saw what a paid expert missed. "She didn't just teach you, she trained you." "I grew up in her study," Anna said, her voice gaining a little of its lost strength. I was her research assistant from the time I could read. We fled to London when the war started. I got my degree. But when she got sick, the medical bills, the fellowships at the university didn't pay enough. After she died, I had so much debt. And I didn't want to be Ali Al-Shami's daughter anymore. It was too much pressure, too much pain. I just wanted to be invisible." She looked at her apron. "So I came here. The pay was good. The tips were better. And no one from Oxford would ever dream of eating in a place I could work." The silence in the room was one of deep, profound respect. "Invisibility," the Sheikh murmured, "is a luxury few can afford, Miss Thompson, and a burden for those who, like you, are born to be seen." He was quiet for a moment, processing. Then his face hardened again, turning from the past to the present. He looked at his lawyer. "James," the Sheikh said, "there is something more here." "Sir?" "This scam. It was too elaborate and too stupid." Anna looked up. "What do you mean?" "The Kawa anachronism," the Sheikh said. "It's a novice mistake, a fatal, foolish error. Sterling and Reed are not novices. They are or were professionals. They built a $200 million lie on a perfect forgery with perfect carbon dating and then made a high school level historical error. Why? It doesn't make sense." A cold dread, different from before, settled over Anna. "You're right, it's too obvious. Unless they didn't care." "Exactly," the Sheikh said. "What if they didn't care if the document was found out, so long as it was authenticated tonight? What if the document itself was not the prize? James, the lawyer, suddenly looked ill. Oh, God, the contract. He grabbed the stack of papers that the sheikh had been about to sign. He began to flip through them, his hands moving with a new, frantic urgency. He bypassed the multi-million-dollar payment schedules and went deep into the appendices. The boilerplate, the standard terms and conditions. Page 42, James muttered. Subsection E, historical claim, resolution, and arbitration. He read the dense legal text, his face growing paler. Your Excellency, James said, his voice strained, this is diabolical. This clause, it states that by authenticating and purchasing the Al Jamil Charter, you are simultaneously agreeing that all historical claims related to the White Desert Territory are subject to a binding third-party arbitration to be held by a panel named in this contract. And who is the panel? The sheikh asked, his voice deadly. 3 holding companies, James said, reading the names, all registered in the Cayman Islands. Wait, I recognize this name. This one, it's a shell corporation. It's a known front for Richard Sterling. The room was ice. He wasn't selling you a claim, James stammered. He was trapping you. Explain, the sheikh commanded. This clause means that by signing, you would have triggered an arbitration you couldn't win. The charter would have been proven a fake, perhaps by Sterling himself a week later. But it wouldn't matter. The arbitration clause would be in effect. And in that arbitration, they would argue that since your primary proof was a forgery, your entire claim to the White Desert Territories was fraudulent. The panel, his panel, would rule against you. Your claim would be extinguished, permanently. Anna felt sick. So the $200 million was bait, the sheikh finished, his eyes dark. It was the buy-in, a $200 million fee to lose a territory worth, conservatively, 20 times that, not in art, but in natural gas, in oil. The scam wasn't $200 million, it was billions. It was a corporate and political assassination, disguised as a historical sale. They weren't just forging a document, Anna whispered. They were forging a legal reality. Dr. Barakat looked horrified. And I almost let it happen. The sheikh stood up and walked to the vast window, looking out over the rainy London skyline. The lights of the city glittered like a trap. He had come tonight to reclaim a piece of his family's honor. He had nearly signed away their entire future. He turned back to the room. He looked at the discarded apron. He looked at the trembling, brilliant, grieving scholar who had saved him. Miss Thompson, he said, your days of hiding are over. The arrival of the Metropolitan Police's fraud squad was, like everything else at the Elysian, a quiet, discreet affair. There were no flashing lights, no sirens, just 3 grim-faced detectives in smart suits who were escorted up the private elevator. Anna, James, and Dr. Barakat sat in the lounge area, drinking the strong, sweet mint tea Anna had finally prepared, while the sheikh gave his statement in the study. They could hear the muffled, indignant protests of Richard Sterling, which were quickly and professionally silenced. Dr. Reed, Anna heard a detective say, had asked for her lawyer and had not spoken another word. Dr. Barakat had not stopped looking at Anna. Your mother, he said, shaking his head. She would have been so proud. I knew her, you know. We corresponded, once at a symposium in Berlin. She was luminous, a mind like a diamond, and I failed her. I failed my sheikh. I saw the beauty of the forgery, and I was blinded. You saw the truth. You were just excited, Anna said, trying to be kind. It's what they were counting on. Emotion, greed, pride. That's how a good con works. You are very wise, Miss Thompson, he said, bowing his head. When the police had gone, taking Sterling and Reed with them, a profound quiet settled over the penthouse. It was nearly midnight. The rain had finally stopped. The sheikh returned, rubbing his temples. He looked tired. James, Dr. Barakat, he said, please wait for me in the car. I would like a private word with Miss Thompson. The 2 men nodded, gathered their things, and left the suite. Frank, the head of security, lingered by the door. Sir? It's all right, Frank. I am safe with her. The sheikh smiled, a small, weary smile. Wait for me downstairs. And then they were alone. The billionaire and the waitress, surrounded by the wreckage of a multi-billion-dollar scam. They will go to prison, the sheikh said, more to himself than to Anna. But they are small fish. Sterling. He doesn't have the capital or the political connections to orchestrate this. He was a front man. Someone else was behind this. Someone who wanted my family's claim to the White Desert neutralized. A rival nation? A corporation? Anna asked. Perhaps we will find out, the sheikh said. He walked over to Anna. That, however, is a problem for my government. I have a different problem. A problem you have created, Miss Thompson. Anna's heart sank. Sir, I now have a crisis of confidence. My experts, my advisors, the systems I have built, they have failed me. Tonight was not just about money. It was about my history, my legacy, and it was all proven to be fragile, vulnerable to a man with a good story and a piece of old goat. He paused, his eyes locking on hers. And then there is you, a woman who can spot a 13th century flourish in a 10th century script. A woman who knows the exact date coffee was introduced to Mecca. A woman who, forgive me, was serving me caviar an hour ago. He shook his head. The universe has a dark sense of humor and a keen sense of timing. Sir, I was just doing what my mother taught me. Precisely, he said, and that is what I want you to do. For me, he walked to the desk. I am establishing a new foundation. I have been considering it for years. Tonight has made it a necessity. I am calling it the Al Jamil Institute for Historical Integrity. Its headquarters will be in Abu Dhabi, with a secondary office here in London. He turned to face her. Its mission will be twofold. First, to find, authenticate, and preserve Middle Eastern artifacts, to protect them from charlatans like Reed and opportunists like Sterling. To digitally archive every manuscript we can find, to fund real scholarship. He took a step closer. And its second mission will be to hunt, to actively seek out forgeries, to expose them, and to dismantle the black market networks that sell our history back to us, piece by piece, as a lie. Anna was speechless. Her heart was beating fast, but for a different reason. I need a director for this institute, the sheikh said. I don't need a dusty academic who is easily flattered. I don't need a bureaucrat. I need someone with an eye for the truth. Someone with Alia al-Shami's blood in her veins. Someone who is not afraid to speak, even when the most powerful men in the room are telling her to be silent. Anna looked down at her black dress, at the apron she had taken off and folded on a nearby chair. Sir, I'm a waitress. I have 80,000 pounds of debt. I'm not who you think I am. I know exactly who you are, the sheikh said, his voice firm. You are Anna Thompson. You are the only person in London who could have saved me tonight. Your debt will be handled. That is trivial. Your position, that is for you to decide. You can go back to your small apartment. You can find another job serving coffee, hiding from the world, hiding from your own name. You can continue to be a ghost. He held out his hand. Or you can come and work for me. You can reclaim your mother's legacy, your own legacy. You can honor her memory not by hiding from it, but by using it. The salary, he added with the smallest hint of a smile, will be sufficient. You will have a research budget that will make the Ashmolean weep. You will answer to no one but me. He was offering her a new life, a life she thought she had lost forever, a life she had been too afraid to even dream of. You will never have to be invisible again, Anna, he said, unless you are on an undercover assignment, of course. Anna looked at his outstretched hand. She thought of her mother, of the years spent in the study, the smell of old books and ink. She thought of the gray, anonymous life she had been living. She was done with ghosts. She wiped her damp palm on her dress. She stood up tall, and for the first time she met his gaze not as a servant, not as a victim, but as an equal. She placed her hand in his. When do I start? 1 year later. The atrium of the new Al Jamil Institute for Historical Integrity in Abu Dhabi was a marvel of glass and light. Sunlight streamed down, illuminating a vast central hall. In the center, on a simple stone pedestal, was a single, illuminated manuscript page. A woman was standing before it, lecturing a small group of graduate students. She was in her late 20s, dressed in a sharp, elegant linen suit. Her hair was no longer in a severe bun, but fell in soft waves to her shoulders. Her hazel eyes were bright and focused. "The forgery," Anna Thompson said, her voice clear and authoritative, "was almost perfect. The vellum was 10th century. The iron gall ink was chemically correct. The Kufic script was a flawless copy." She pointed to a high-resolution digital image of the Al-Jamil Charter on a screen beside her. "But it was flawless," she continued, "and that was the first mistake. History is not flawless. It is human. It is messy. The forger, Dr. Reed, was a copyist, not a master. She copied the form of the letters, but not their soul. She was afraid of making a mistake, and in doing so, she created one." She zoomed in on the infamous word "kwawa." And then there was this, the fatal error, the 500-year anachronism. They spent millions building a cage of false science, but they failed to read the text. They prioritized the container over the content. "This," she said, tapping the screen, "is why we are here. Not just to carbon date and spectroanalyze, but to read, to understand, to know the history so well that we can feel instantly when something is wrong." A student raised his hand. "Director Thompson, what happened to them? The forgers?" Anna smiled, a small, satisfied smile. "Dr. Reed, or rather Evelyn Reed, cooperated fully. She is serving a 2-year sentence, reduced for her testimony. The calligrapher they hired was an unfortunate artist in Istanbul who had no idea what he was creating. He is now one of our consultants." And Richard Sterling?" "Mr. Sterling," Anna said, "is serving a 12-year sentence for fraud, but more importantly, his testimony led us to the man behind him." "Who was it?" "A rival corporate entity," Anna said smoothly, "a holding company that believed it had a competing claim to the White Desert. After the scandal, their board was restructured. Their claim was found to be baseless." She didn't need to tell them the full story, the story of how the Sheikh's legal team, funded by the Institute, had launched a surgical, devastating countersuit that not only exposed the rival corporation, but effectively bankrupted it. The White Desert gas fields were secure. "The Al-Jamil Charter," Anna said, "is now the centerpiece of our Lessons in Forgery collection. It is the most valuable fake we own, a $200 million reminder to always read the fine print." The students laughed and took notes. After the lecture, Anna walked through her lab. Dr. Barakat was at a high-resolution scanner, happily digitizing a 14th century Quran, his face glowing with a new sense of purpose. He was now her head of acquisitions. "Anna," he said, "the courier from Sana'a is here. They've brought the manuscripts. They're waiting in your office." "Thank you, doctor," she said. She walked into her office. It was large and airy, with one wall made entirely of glass, overlooking the blue-green waters of the Persian Gulf. It smelled of old books and coffee, and sitting at her desk, sipping a small cup of espresso, was Sheikh Khalid Al-Jamil. "Your Excellency," Anna said, surprised, "I wasn't expecting you." "I was in the neighborhood," he said, his eyes twinkling. "I caught the end of your lecture. The form, but not the soul. Your mother's words." "She is a constant presence here," Anna said, touching a framed photo of Dr. Alia Al-Shami on her desk. "Good. She should be," the Sheikh said. He stood up, holding a file. "I bring you a new challenge. We've had reports. A private collector in Geneva. He claims to have acquired a lost astrolabe from the personal collection of Saladin." Anna's eyes lit up. "Saladin's astrolabe? That's a myth, a legend." "So they say," the Sheikh said, handing her the file. "The price is significant. The seller is very, very careful. He won't send pictures. He wants a face-to-face authentication." Anna opened the file. "Geneva. When?" "You fly tonight," the Sheikh said. "Frank is waiting for you. You'll go in as the buyer's consultant. Anonymous. Invisible." Anna looked up from the file, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Invisible, sir." "The best kind of visible," the Sheikh replied. "Take Dr. Barakat with you. This time, I'd like him to see the truth before it's pointed out to him." "Yes, Your Excellency," Anna said. She picked up her bag, her mind already racing, sifting through data, dates, and historical star charts. She was Anna Thompson, the director. She was Alia al-Shami's daughter. She was a scholar, a detective, and the guardian of 1,000 years of history. She was no longer a ghost. She was the one who did the hunting. From a rain-soaked street in London to the head of a multi-billion-dollar foundation, Anna Thompson's life changed in the time it took to speak 5 words of truth. Her story is a powerful reminder that the most important voice in the room is never the loudest, the richest, or the most powerful. It's the one that's brave enough to be honest. It shows that deep knowledge, integrity, and the courage to speak up can change the world. Or in this case, save a $200 million fortune and a legacy worth billions. If this story inspired you, please show your support. It helps us create more content just like this. Click that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and most importantly, hit subscribe and ring that bell. You won't want to miss the next story we uncover. Thank you for watching.